Mika. On appelle notre ami parce qu'au Québec, on commence à être un peu habitué à le voir. Il est souvent dans les médias. Et, en fait, la première fois, c'était au Club Soda. J'y étais. Après 3 chansons, on avait réalisé qu'il parlait un meilleur français que nous. Presque. Enfin, c'était la grande surprise dans la salle parce que personne n'avait vraiment eu conscience du fait qu'il était aussi francophone, en plus de toutes les cultures auxquelles il est capable de s'adresser. Donc, et ensuite, après le Club Soda, on l'a revu mais directement au Centre Bell, sans transition. Donc, il n'est jamais passé au Métropolis. C'est la salle dont je m'occupe pour l'air. Et après le Centre Bell, on a eu aussi des soirées à la Place des Arts. On a eu récemment des soirées avec l'Orchestre Symphonique, où c'était vraiment magnifique. Et ce parcours amène Mika à jouer aujourd'hui au Festival de Jazz pour la première fois. On est très honorés. Merci d'être là.
Non, c'est moi, absolument, qui est honoré. Je suis vraiment ravi d'être ici.
Dans les concerts avec l'Orchestre Symphonique, j'avais remarqué que vous aviez vraiment l'art de vous challenger en faisant ce concert sans aucune rythmique et qui vous accompagne habituellement. Vous avez fait le pari de ne prendre que l'Orchestre Symphonique et des chanteurs avec vous pour faire tout le répertoire. Et je me suis dit que c'était quand même un morceau de bravoure assez considérable, étant donné que votre musique est souvent très, très emportée et tout, de vous fier sur l'orchestre pour faire ça. Donc on s'est dit aussi qu'au Festival de Jazz, une personne comme Mika, un aventurier de la musique comme Mika, avait vraiment sa place. Et on est vraiment très, très heureux que vous ayez accepté de participer à notre programmation de cette année.
Merci.
Mika, c'est un plaisir de partager quelques moments en votre compagnie. On va mener l'entrevue en français et en anglais. Il va y avoir un bloc en anglais because we have some international journalists and visitors. Donc, si vous le permettez, on va commencer en anglais puis après on va switcher au français. Ouais, switcher en franglais. So Mika, you're back in Montreal. Like André said, you have a place in the Montrealers' heart. You've spent time in Montreal because you've recorded here, I think it was in 2011. What are your marks in Montreal? What it's like for you to be back here?
You know, it's funny because Montreal is one of those cities that when you first arrive to it, especially in the dead of winter, you're like, what the hell have I done? Because it's so cold, and it's a city that reveals itself slowly, you know, especially when things are hidden behind closed doors. And then very quickly, it's somewhere that kind of found a place in my heart, because I think maybe it's also the fact that my father is American, but he grew up everywhere. I grew up partly in Paris, I speak French, I grew up, my whole family's in New York, so even just kind of like, you know, the mixture of the Francophone mixed with the kind of North America, that kind of thing, I instantly felt comfortable here. Mixing my 2 languages, walking into a shop, speaking both, you know, that just on a kind of like practical basis made me feel very at home. But then beyond that, I have to say it's the kind of the cultural thing about Montreal which makes it so fascinating to me. It is in Quebec, and mainly in Quebec, they're so adamant about establishing a sense of Quebecois culture because Quebec refuses to be that kind of, you know, in the shadow of the United States, and neither will it be the kind of lesser cousin of French culture. And so therefore it provokes a lot of cultural excellence and a lot of experimentation, which I think we've seen, you know, from cinema now to theater to, you know, like Robert Lepage, one of my biggest heroes, and even in music. So I don't know, it's a kind of place which is, for a creative, is very, very, very welcoming. I came here to work with Nick Littlemore, who is one of the second half of Empire of the Sun. I started working here, I've been doing shows here for years, and then one of the biggest adventures I ever launched myself into was the symphonic concert, which took 9 months of preparation. And it's you know, it's just been effortless to kind of like do things that push me out of my boundaries in Montreal, and I think that in Quebec in general I'm always presented opportunities which are challenging, which are, and also the idea of like one genre not having to exist just in one place, that kind of open-mindedness and how things can kind of slide between genres here it's much easier here, for example, than in other places around the world.
You've just released this album, No
Yeah.
Place in Heaven. There's a great range of emotion. It's diversified. It's not the same energy at your first album, Life in Cartoon Motion. Tell us about the title. It's kind of dramatic. No Place in Heaven. What does it mean to you?
Well, No Place in Heaven. It's kind of it's. In a way, it makes you wonder why, and it makes you want to know why a guy at 31 years old is saying there's no place in heaven for me, but does it with a big smile. And I think it's kind of a liberating title. It's about not living, it's kind of shaking off this concept of shame or aftermath, and kind of wrestling with the concept of living in the moment a little bit more. Also, I think that I like the idea of of heaven being represented as this kind of motel that has no vacancy anymore, and so and kind of like, if there's no place in heaven, well then I might as well have as much fun as I possibly can, or be as true to myself as I possibly can. So it's more of a provocation than anything.
And the strings arrangement on the album are beautiful. There's 3 songs that you work with somebody from Montreal.
Actually, it's the same guy, Simon Leclerc, who did my symphonic show, and the strings were recorded here also.
How did you work on that? You sent him the songs, and then he wrote the arrangements?
The joy of Skype. I think most albums that are made nowadays would not be able to be made without Skype. I mean, you do string sessions with Skype, you do writing, fixing sessions with Skype. I mean, yeah, sponsored by Skype. That's how we do it. I mean, distance is not a problem.
There's a beautiful song. It's called Last Party. It's magnificent. Can you tell us the story behind that song?
Last Party is a song that was kind of started when I saw this documentary about the life of Freddie Mercury, and he, when he found out that he was HIV positive, that he had AIDS, he had a reaction that kind of marked me. He put himself in a nightclub and he partied for 3 days, and it was an extremely kind of a mythical party, quite a legendary kind of bacchanal, decadent thing, and that's how he dealt with that kind of information, which in the 80s was a sort of condemnation, because there was not enough help, there was not enough medical kind of advancement to make people live for a very long time. And so that mixture of who he was, the terrible life-changing news, and how he dealt with it, I was kind of fascinated by that, and I wanted to write a song about it. I've had things in my life that have not as serious or profound as that, but different things that have changed my life. And that mixture of elation when you get terrible news and complete sadness, I wanted to communicate that into a song. And so I built this very strange thing that I don't think can be qualified as a pop song whatsoever. Actually, a lot of this music, at first glance it looks like pop on this album, but actually when you kind of take it to pieces and you start dismantling it, you realize that it's not traditional pop at all. If you look at a song like Les Baisers Perdus, which is really, it's like, it doesn't even have a proper chorus. It's more like something that you'd hear in a movie. If you listen to Good Guys as well, which is another song, that isn't even a proper pop song either. They're all kind of like, but the one thing that they have in common is that melody is extremely important, and I think that is what brings it back towards pop music.
I think one of my favorites on this album is L'amour fait ce qu'il veut. Mm-hmm. It's a great song. There's a disco pulsation on that song, which is not a guilty pleasure for you. We've already heard disco on other albums. What is your relationship to disco?
It's disco? I don't know, I hate disco. I mean, I like bits of it, like where Giorgio Moroder walks in with his walking synthesized bass lines. That's the best version of disco. But